if I actually thought, you know, that 3,000 people were putting their coats on and locking their front doors and getting into their cars just to see me, I'd have stage fright.
2 to come up over 10 seconds. Follow spots to snap on upstage left and announcement.
I just really tune myself up to do it because I've got to give out so much energy to all those people and I've got to be ready to do it.
OK, I can't think of any reason not to start.
Hello, 10 years ago, the South Bank Show made a programme with Victoria Wood. 10 years is a long time in comedy, but Victoria Wood is still very much at the top of her game. Recently voted the world's funniest woman by Radio Times readers, she used to be celebrated for her stand-up comedy tours, filling the Albert Hall many times over. But at present, she's given all that up. In tonight's programme, we see how this remarkable comedy writer and performer has developed her talent, turning her attention to sitcoms, musicals, and, in a new departure for her, a drama set in wartime Britain.
Take 1.
I think I've been really lucky, I have to say. I think I slipped through a crack somewhere. You know, I think I was really lucky to get into sixth form and to go to university because I had no O-levels. So I think I have been quite fortunate in the start of my career and quite fortunate to arrive in television at a time when there were things like talent shows and there were news programmes that used topical songs and all that sort of thing. I don't think I would have a hope in hell of having the same career now.
Have a cup of tea, please.
Oh, and would you like it in a lovely brown teapot with a cosy on and a china cup and saucer and a couple of homemade biscuits?
Yes, please.
Well, then you should have stayed at home instead of trying to have a career.
We don't want any pudding.
You don't want any pudding?
Right.
But you're having a sweet?
No. Take it away.
Take it away what?
The trolley.
The trolley? Take it away the trolley.
And don't bring it back.
What? The trolley?
Marjorie, I'm coming up. OK. If Marjorie were to let her concentration lapse for just 1 second, I could literally... Relax, unwind a bit, effing blind a bit. Could I have a custard fucking cream and shut the fuck up?
I'm on my limit, lady, and I've nothing to lose. I've got high blood pressure and water retention. Do you know what that gives you?
Boiling water?
I wanna be 14 again, when sex was just called number 10, and I was up to 7.5. And boys were for love, and girls were for fun. You burst out laughing if you saw a nun.
You know, when I was at school, I was writing plays, I was writing songs, so it wasn't... I mean, it did get slightly diverted at one point, so I was mainly just doing stand-up comedy, but there were always these other things that I wanted to do. It was only ever a question of time, and I think when my children were small, I really had to cut down the amount of work I did, so I don't feel I have a great body of work behind me, but now, because they're bigger, and because I'm not married, I do spend, you know, I can produce more things now.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Victoria Wood.
Writing and performing her own stand-up material made Victoria Wood the proverbial household name. Her stand-up career came to a climax in 2002 when she had a 3-week sellout show at the Royal Albert Hall.
And they send me down to the women's clinic. So I'm sitting in the women's clinic, I'm thinking, well, I never knew there were so many ways for women to fall to pieces. They're all sitting there, they've got their bosoms hanging out, pelvic floors dangling. There's a woman with a cervix in a margarine tub like this. And she's going, I took it out to wash it, I couldn't get it back in.
Do you get into a character to do it?
No. No, you try not... Well, I try not to. I try to be more like myself, really. That's the skill of it, I think, is to try and present a part of yourself, the truest part of yourself, really.
And you think that's where the response, the big response comes from?
Well, I don't know. I don't know where the response comes from. I mean, hopefully they understand what you're saying. It's about us tuning into something together. Really, you're just being the spokesperson for what people have said, but you're packaging it up in some sort of very tight way.
Be mighty, be flighty, come and melt the buttons on me flame-proof nightie. Let's do it tonight.
You know what you're going to say until you've written what you've written?
No, I don't know what I've said until I've said it, because you don't know what you've said until other people have understood it. So whatever you had in your... It's that wish to tell a story is what it is, and that's all stand-up is stories, and that's all drama is, that's all musicals are, but they just have a different feel about them.
Sorry, can I just... We're just doing a little... Would you mind, Nancy, if you... Can I just... Oh, thank you, sir. Oh, that is kind of you, sir. I saw you coming along the street with your little fur hat on. I thought I wouldn't bother with him, Deirdre. He looks quite a twit and a half. No, it's just a little survey. No, we're not selling anything. No, it's totally bona fide.
A lot of us are a little bit... I'm talking about stand-up comics, they're a little bit dysfunctional, and that makes you able to do that very strange job of standing on stage telling lies for the amusement of others.
There's my ID. Yes, I do look rather startled, don't I? I was taken in a photo booth and somebody had just poked an eclair through the curtains.
There's nothing as wonderful as hitting a gag home in a theatre full of 5,000 people. There's nothing to beat that for purity and the whole essence of entertainment packed into that one little sentence that you've picked all those words and you've put them in the right order.
You know, I've been thinking about giving it up, you know, being a stand-up comedian. I was thinking about stopping doing it. Oh. Not tonight, I'll wait till you've gone home, but...
It's a very warm feeling. But the thing is, it's very transient. That's the problem with it. It only exists for that moment, and then the minute you're off in the wings, it's gone. That's the problem with it. I think that's why so many of us turn to drink and drugs, is to try and keep that feeling going when you're not on the stage.
When I fly away to a better day. That's my idea. It's my best idea. It's a great idea. And oh, I had this job and it weren't much cop, so I packed it in. And oh, my man went mad. She said, what have you done? Said I packed it in. I just walked out. I packed it in. 'Cause oh, somewhere round the corner and headed straight my way, I can see so clear I won't be here. I'll have a better day, a better day.
I woke up really, really late this morning, so I'm shouting at my children. Because one of them was being really stupid, you know, he wouldn't get dressed. So I overreacted. I've had him adopted.
I don't crave it, I don't think. I certainly don't crave it at the moment. I think I was always so worried about being swept away by it that I kept very cool about it, really.
Crave suggests that it can become a form of addiction.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure, yeah. I've got so many other addictions I can't really be doing with that one as well. There wouldn't be time. I think it was
When
all
I
right.
saw you doing stand-up, you seemed to enjoy it a lot.
Yeah. It's quite, lonely, that's all.
So did you give it up because of that?
Well, I don't know that I have given it up. I'm just not doing it at the moment because I don't have anything to say. So I can't really see the point of doing it except for the money. So I'm just not doing it. I think, just as you get older, your perception shifts, and sometimes you feel that things are different just because they're not as they were when you were very, very on top of things. When you're 15, 16, 18, you feel completely at one with the world because that's your world and it belongs to you. And then when you're that much older, you know that it doesn't, and your perception shifts back a bit, and sometimes the world seems very harsh, but I don't think the world's changed, it's that one has got older.
This will be Jeffrey. Hello?
Buenas noches.
Yeah. Hi. It was really good. Yeah. Well, I'm here with the camera crew. Yeah. Don't speak up. Don't speak up. Don't call me Chuchy Bottom.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is the Great Sorprendo. I come from Spain. It's true. I really am very, very big in the Canaries. And ladies and gentlemen...
Victoria Wood and Geoffrey Durham, the magician, were married for 22 years and have 2 children. Shortly after her stand-up tour in 2003, they split up.
Is that exactly what you want?
Because I'm separated and my marriage has broken down, which, you know, some people think, you know, that's a routine. And I think, well, I can't. How can I? A, because it's painful, and, you know, there's somebody else involved, and I've got 2 children, and part of me would love to do a big routine part, and another part of me is absolutely horrified by the thought.
Has the change in your private life in any way ridden over into your working life?
Yeah, I think so.
Has it changed the way you attack your work?
Well, at its most basic level, it gives you more time. Because if you're not in a relationship, which I'm not, all I have to concern myself is my 2 children. And the rest of the time, I work, and that's all I do. So I suppose it has freed up a bit of my life for work.
Even when she was married, Victoria Wood was working flat out. She wrote and performed in 16 episodes of Dinner Ladies, and even took on the job of warming up the studio audience.
This is Shobna Galati playing Anita. Your ambition is to be in the bill, isn't it, my darling? No, look, you get very good women's parts in the bill. You get to stand in the doorway of a block of council flats going, you better come in then. This is Maxine Peake, who's not done any acting at all, have you? Not even this afternoon you didn't do any.
The thing about this show is, I'm on the set the whole time. I have nil gossiping time. I don't ever get to sit out with any of them, and it's really unfortunate. I'm in, you know, I come in at 9:30 and I say, these are the cuts for today. Your line's gone, your line's gone, your line's gone. Filthy looks all round. Get on the set, rehearse, go home, make the tea, off we go again. I don't go out, so I don't socialise with them. So I really would like to have spent more time with all of them. You know, I'm working with about 4 new people that I've never worked with before, and I just have got my head down to keep my own show together.
She was alert to everything. She never missed a trick. You know, it's like, no, that's not working. So you'd know that'd go. Even if it was just a little bit out, we think most writers say, oh, leave it in, it'll be fine. We'll stick a few more. We'll just put the volume up on the canned laughter. It went, you know, somebody could completely trust, you know. It's just, she's a perfectionist.
Look, I'll be Her Royal Highness. So that's me there, and that's her here. Here I am. So, tell me, what is the most popular meal here in the canteen?
Arseholes on toast.
Oh, lovely. And then we move on.
How did Dinner Ladies come about then? Was that a reaction to stand-up comedy? Or?
Oh no, that was just something I wanted to see if I could do. I wanted to see if I could write a sitcom. That was all it was, really. And I did do one, but I probably won't ever do another one.
This is our youngest worker, not been with us very long. This is Twinkle.
That's an unusual name. Why do they call you that?
I don't really know.
And what's the most popular meal here in the canteen?
I don't really know.
Oh, that was very informative, thank you.
What were the problems you set yourself in that? What problems did you see in that?
Well, I wanted to do an ensemble piece where everybody had a sort of equal role. I wanted it set in one set, almost like a stage set, so people would come on and off. But the real problem with television sitcom, which was, I think Dinner Ladies was blown out of the water by the royal family, was that suddenly it became very, very old-fashioned to have a studio audience, to have 4 cameras and a studio audience sitting behind the cameras, looking at it as if it was a stage set. And that suddenly looked very old-fashioned. You're very restricted in your blocking of people of where you put them. You have to sort of put everybody in a line, and you have to have very, very bright lighting. And it suddenly, once they started to do sitcoms on film with no audience, we looked like something from the 50s. And so I could never really reconcile that problem of how to make it look fantastic and yet have an audience so that it was good fun to do and that you could time the lines. I don't see any solution to that.
Excuse me, that's going on my toast there.
It doesn't matter if you're slimming, does it?
Can I just say, that's absolutely none of your business, and I don't think your tone's very appropriate, actually.
Well, we can't all swan about ordering toast. Some of us have personal problems.
I know we do, but we don't bring them to work. I lost 8 tropical fish last week in a power cut.
Why should I care about your bloody fish?
Oi!
Why should I care about your bloody husband?
I'm
a dental hygienist in Cardiff, and frankly, I don't blame him.
I was working to a very old-fashioned set of rules. My model for Dinner Ladies was the American drama, ER. I wanted it to look like that. I wanted it to be very fast-paced, people talking across each other, people moving around. Well, you cannot do that in a television studio. They can only move on one plane.
Well, how do they solve it in ER then?
Well, they don't have an audience. That's all it is. Yeah, because it's not a comedy.
Because you need the timing for the laughs.
Well, I think you do, but I mean, in the Royal Family they don't, but that's slightly more naturalistic, observational comedy. It's slightly different, whereas I very blatantly try and write gags, and gags demand that somebody laughs at the end of them, otherwise they've failed.
In a later sketch, Victoria Wood was able to experiment with the fluid camera work she so admired in ER.
It's the tea urn, she won't boil.
Bring her over to the socket. Red table. The one in the kitchen is faulty. That could have triggered her off.
Hey, careful, careful.
There's tea bags out. Tea bags coming out on my count. 1, 2, 3. Bags out. Careful. I may need to change the plug. I hope I don't have to.
3 minutes, the door's open, Pauline.
Okay. I'm going to hit the plug. When I do, I want you to bang the thermostat. Got it? Got it. Clear. Again. Clear. One more, we have to.
No! Pauline, it's over. It's cold.
The South Association with UBS.
Victoria Wood's first major outing as a writer was a 90-minute drama she wrote for the Sheffield Crucible Theatre when she was 25.
Julie had a lover, he signed his letters lover. She passed them round her friends at break. She didn't show them Maureen, so Maureen said how boring and had cake.
Have you got anything to say?
Sorry?
I'm pissing off and leaving me pregnant.
Sorry about that. It was obviously a bit awkward for me. I didn't want my boss finding out I knocked up a schoolgirl. And I had a long talk with my family. They were fantastic, really helpful. And we all thought, you know, it'd be better for me to go.
I wrote a sketch in a review at the Bush Theatre at Shepherd's Bush with Julie, that Julie Walters was in, and David Leland, who was then a theatre director, who's now a film director, was doing a season of new plays at the Sheffield Crucible and asked me to write one. And because I'd never written a play before, I didn't see there was any problem with that. And just wrote it in 3 weeks. I don't think I corrected it or rewrote it. I think it just came out like that, and it was one of those lucky things that it actually did work on stage. Well, and then it was picked up by Peter Eckersley at Granada and put on television the year afterwards. Peter was a master at cutting and taught me how you know, really how to cut things down and not to be scared of what you lose. Now I'm very cavalier now about cutting because I never mind things going. I think that's my, if I've got one strength, is that I'm not precious about the stuff I've written. I will just throw it away.
It's the white cortina up against the wall. You meet me there. We can have 20 minutes or so before I go back, OK? Oh, if you've got one of them panty girdles on or anything like that, take it off, will you? Only they're bloody murder to deal with in the back seat of a car, and we won't have much time, OK?
I'd never been in a northern club. In fact, I've still never been in a northern club, but I had been in to a club in Birmingham to do a talent competition one lunchtime, and if there's anything more depressing than a nightclub at lunchtime, I don't know what it is. And it was based on that.
Talent was a turning point, and Wood's career really took off in the 80s with dozens of successful sketch shows and comedy series, many of them with Julie Walters.
Julie Walters is a person, a woman type person, to effect, and she has hair and some feet, and she does washing up, drying, and that's really all I know.
Is that okay? That sort of thing? Is that the sort of thing you wanted? Yeah?
Over the next few years, Victoria Wood wrote other dramas, but it wasn't until she had a major hit with Pat and Margaret in 1994 that she was recognised as a serious dramatic talent.
Yes, Margaret Mottershed, motorway waitress, the sister you haven't seen for 27 years. Now one of the highest paid actresses in American television. A very special magic moment. Here she is, from Glamour, the glamorous Patricia Bedford.
But what intrigued you about the celebrity aspect of the celebrity?
I was intrigued by people who actually thought that they were a better person for being known by lots of people, and that actually elevated them.
We are the two diabetics from Ketteridge. Would it be possible to have a 10x8 colour portrait to Kay and Bunty? Good luck with magic moments. We love you in Lakeland Vet. We do your workout. Have you a message for diabetics?
When you deal with me, Claire, think icon.
I was quite interested in anybody who believed the things that were written about them and who lived their life on that plane. I was fascinated by that, really. What would happen if they were confronted by a very real situation where they had to deal with real emotions and they couldn't control what was written about them. I saw something like that program that Cilla Black used to do, Surprise, Surprise, where they brought together, I think it was two sisters or a mother and son. They brought together two people who had no idea of the other's existence. And there was a big sort of hugging and kissing, very sentimental moment. And I thought, ooh, what will happen when the lights go off and they go around the back? I thought that's going to be really awkward, probably. And I was intrigued by that. If two people were brought together, sort of unwittingly, what would the fallout of that be? Because you gave me such a funny look before. I had this horrible feeling, you don't want me to be here.
I don't.
Pardon?
I don't want to talk to you.
Why not?
I don't want this. I'm doing a book. I'm here to plug a book.
What have I to do then?
How did you get here?
We came on a coach.
Fine. Go and get on it. I'll deal with everything else.
Do you not want to know about me?
No, I don't want to know.
Have I just to go then?
Would you say that Pat and Margaret are to some extent both you?
Yeah, it was. It was that battle between the one who can never get on, the sort of impotent person, and the one who's so determined to get on. There's no room for anything else. It was. I don't have the things you have. I don't have 3 houses and a swimming pool and an open top
Mercedes.
This is me. This is where I live. And it's not nice. And I know I spent all yesterday saying I wasn't jealous and I was just glad to see you and I was happy living the way I do. Well, I'm not.
It's always been a strength of Victoria Wood's writing that it's based on her own experience. But in a new departure, she deliberately chose to dramatise the story of someone else's life.
Dear sirs, in answer to your advertisement asking for accounts of daily life in wartime, allow me to introduce myself. I am married to a master carpenter. I am a busy wife and mother. I was given this book called The War Diaries of Nella Last. It was published in the early 80s. It's a mass observation diary, or extracts of a mass observation diary, of this woman who was a housewife in Barrow.
Dennis, what actually is mass observation?
Well, in layman's terms, we're putting policymakers in touch with the views of ordinary people and reporting to the government on the public's reaction to life in wartime.
Oh, sounds a bit brainy.
And we want that to go in Saturday's paper as well. Thanks so much. Goodbye. Do you think we've made it sound too worthy? Suppose nobody writes in.
Well, loonies will always write in.
I had always thought that actually it would make a good drama, and it was a good part for a middle-aged woman, because she's 49 at the start of the war. But then the more I started to read it, it started to change in my mind, and it changed into something else. At first I thought it would just be sort of a jolly, you know, wartime romp full of spam and sandwiches and people painting their legs brown and all that sort of thing, but actually it became about somebody's emotional journey.
I don't care what you have to say. You're so far from understanding me, it's laughable. You can't mother me. That's all finished. You can't turn up with a bloody cake and make it all lovely.
I wasn't. I just wanted to see you.
Well, I didn't want to see you.
It was two things. One, it was a way of writing about relationships without anybody referring them back to me or thinking they were anything to do with me and my own relationships. And it was a way of writing in another idiom, because if you're writing for people in 1939, you cannot use all the tricks that you've amassed over the years. You have to phrase things in a different way, and that was just really interesting. So, this is the clock tower, so this is the top of Barrow, so we're looking out all over Barrow. This is where Nella last lived. So when I was researching House 549, I went to Nella's house first because a lot of the diary is about her new house and her housework and her daily routine. I wanted to see what the actual house was like, because she describes it as being very modern. That's 9 Ilkley Road. That's Nella Last's house that she moved into in about 1937, 1938, and it won a prize apparently at the Ideal Home Exhibition for its design. And I would think the real Nella probably got a real boost from moving to this very bright modern house, from living in quite a dull terrace down by the docks. But her whole life was centred round the house and her two boys. Is it fixed, Robbie?
Everybody!
Are you putting...
Oh! Cheese!
Say gas mask. Gas mask!
That's Will Last. That's a very unflattering picture of Cliff, who I think was very good looking. There's Nella looking a bit... That's like one of her bad days, one of her nerves. And there's Arthur with a fag in the middle of his mouth. I've got a Nella in my head. I've got real Nella. When I first saw photographs of Nella, I already had imagined her, and then when I saw the pictures, I mean, I don't think Nella was the best-looking woman in the world. I think she looked a little bit like a turnip. Sorry to say. You build up a picture of somebody, and their real image cannot match up to what's in your head. And yet again, when you start writing a drama, you start creating a character. It's not this person, and it's not me either. It's some sort of strange imagining. This is the last family business. He was a master joiner, and his father was a master joiner, and that sign that you can only just about read is Nella's father-in-law, and the Anne's son refers to Nella's husband, and they were carpenters and shop fitters. I think the difficult thing about their marriage is that he had what he wanted. He had a comfortable home, he had a wife at home, he had two sons who were doing good things in their lives. One was fighting in the war, one was a tax inspector. She was obviously frustrated by that life. That wasn't enough for her, and she wanted something that he was not able to give her. And that's just a sad fact. Hang on. Here's Daddy. I'm giving him the phone now.
Hello. Yes, I'm all right, son. How are you? That's good. Very good. There's nothing wrong with her. No, don't bother. Bye.
Did you get cut off?
No, the pips went. I told them not to bother putting any more money in. Right, need to get on.
If you write about a bad marriage now, then you'd have to write about divorce or separation. If you write about a woman who's 50 in the war and who's been married since she was 20 and does never ever consider leaving her husband, that just dramatically, that's really interesting to me. And a woman who's really clever, and yet she's in a very small domestic arena. Her husband doesn't like her to go out unless he goes with her, and he never goes with her, so she never goes out. Once the war starts, she's got a cast iron reason to go out. It's a good reason to go out and work. To help the war effort. So that's a justification. She works for the WVS.
Here is the story of a volunteer army. Women who, in addition to their civil defense duties, do odd jobs. Maids of all work in green uniform. One of the big jobs the WVS has handled is clothes. Clothes for the bombed out, for wrecked seamen, for refugees. From all over the empire.
And she's saved by the beginning of the war Obviously, that wasn't Hitler's plan when he invaded Poland to liberate Nella Last, but that was one of the side effects, because she was then able, with a clear conscience, to go out of the house. And then she starts to make friends, and she just becomes... She just flowers, really, and that's what it's about.
No beverages near the bandages. Oh, you look like a useful little body with a teapot. Come with me to the Casbah. Possibly scullery would be a more accurate term.
And so once she starts working outside the house, of course that causes a few shockwaves within her marriage, because she's changed the basis on which the marriage works.
Well, you've been and there's no need to go again.
Everyone seemed very nice.
Look, I work in these people's houses. They're not like you, these ladies. They're all fur coat and Austin 7s. If you think you'll fit in, you won't. If you want to make tea, make mine.
The part of Nella's husband was played by David Threlfall.
That's this kind of northern repression that some people from that generation and from the current generation have, or people generally. Well, you can't just say it's northern. It's, you know, the repressedness of that character. Again, it's just more complex than saying someone's funny, someone's sad, someone's glum. There's much more to them, and therefore that was always being worked on and always being teased out.
Son's missing. You're still scribbling away. Why do you do it? Eh? Who wants to read what you've got to say?
I don't know who wants to read it, but I tell you why I have to do it. It's because I have nobody. I have nobody to talk to. I don't have a sympathetic, loving, interested friend. I don't have that person. I only have you.
She can actually write some very, very moving and interesting and, you know, dramatic. You know, to say that she's just funny, I think would be wrong.
Well, it was in this street, and I think it was that shop there that's boarded up. I think that was the shop where Nella had her Red Cross shop, where she raised money for parcels for prisoners of war. It was 10 shillings for each parcel, and she had lots of it's like a charity shop now. It's full of second-hand goods and bits and bobs and books and clothes, and she ran it, and that was her world. And I think that was the first time she'd ever had anything of her own, and I know that she said she felt really empty when it had to close down. Closed down at the end of the war.
Mrs. Last.
Sorry?
I'm Alan. Mrs. Waite's grandson. We met on the beach that time. I'm just out of the camp. I just wanted to... Sorry. I get a bit weepy. I'm not quite fit yet. Just wanted to see the shop. Say thank you for the parcels. Because when we got one, we knew we weren't forgotten.
Nella says in her diary that she wishes she could have been a writer. Well, she was a writer. She's a really good writer, I think. She has a really interesting way of expressing herself. This is from June 1940. This morning I lingered over my breakfast, reading and rereading the accounts of the Dunkirk evacuation. I felt as if deep inside me was a harp that vibrated and sang, like the feeling on a hillside of gorse in the hot, bright sun, or seeing suddenly, as you walk through a park, a big bed of clear red poppies in all their brave splendour. I forgot I was a middle-aged woman who often got up tired and who had backache.
It's remarkably well written, isn't it?
Beautifully written.
Really remarkably well written.
I mean, I think if she'd been a generation or so later, she wouldn't have just been at home making dolls and knitting. She would have had to. Like my own mother was really, really intelligent and had to leave school at 14, and only later on, when I was 11 or so, she went to university. She did all O-levels, went to university and became a teacher. My mother was a beautiful writer as well, but she was not of that generation where one left home to go and do things.
As well as starring it and writing it,
What made you want to do executive producing? Why, I mean, you've got more involved in this than anything, as I understand it.
Well, I suppose I wanted to be able to have the say that the writer doesn't always have a say. You know, I want to be able to talk to the designer and say, you know, I've been to her house. I know what sort of house it is. I think I know what sort of feel. It's just a way of keeping yourself in the loop. It's not a way of being sort of egomaniac about it. It's just trying to keep your vision as much as you can right up until the end.
Action! She's very, very relaxed about changes, about any ideas people have. She incorporates the good ones, she kindly rejects the bad ones. Altogether, I think she's a more confident writer and performer than she was 10 years ago.
3:35, take one guide track.
Action. It isn't any good me saying, I think you're feeling this here, because she says, no, I'm not, I'm feeling this because I bloody wrote the thing. Okay. But if I think that she's not getting that feeling across, which we've discussed often enough, if it's not coming over because of some expression or in her voice or her face, then obviously it's my job to go in and say, too slow, a little more light-hearted, that's sardonic and you're giving it just a sarcasm or whatever.
The day that we filmed on the beach, I think, was the hottest day that Barrow had had that year, and I think it was 40 degrees on the beach. It was absolutely baking, and we had to walk across the sands to get to where we were filming, and I don't know if I had my hat on, but I certainly had a wig on, and the minute you've got a wig on, you're absolutely boiling. I had an enormous sort of bulletproof bra and a girdle.
3:34, take two.
You can get days like this on Boxing Day, clearly, but the temperature would be 60 degrees less, that's all. And it's difficult for the actors, principally, to act as though they were cold and to clutch their cups of tea to them as though it was warming them up rather than anything else.
How much did you invent from Nella Last War, from the diaries?
Most of it.
Most of it.
I stuck to the facts, you know, that Hitler invaded Poland and things like that, and I stuck
and
to
she lived in Barrow-in-Furness.
Yeah, stuck to
Joined
the timeline
WBS,
of the war, that she was married, that she did have these 2 children.
It's an interesting line, this, isn't it? This invention on established fact.
Yeah, well, what you're trying to do is to get an essence of something from the diary and put it into another form. And so I've tried to be very true to what I believe the substrata of the diary is. I've tried to be very, very true to that.
Good evening. I was just about to ask your wife to dance.
I'd say to the bother.
The South Bank Show, in association with UBS.
In 2005, Victoria Wood launched her first West End musical, Acorn Antiques. With a star cast including Julie Walters, Neil Morrissey, Celia Imrie and Duncan Preston, it had a 16-week sellout run.
I was bending over cleaning the bath. Your father slipped on a cake of life, boy, and his private parts went up me king plate. Easily done.
Why did you decide to do Acorn Antiques as a musical?
Well, I do think, in hindsight, that was a very bad idea.
Really?
Yeah, I do.
You got Trevor on to direct it.
I know. No, that was a great idea. Look, I'll just say it was a great hit and it made a profit, and we're just about to do it again on tour. So there's nothing wrong with it. I'm not trying to put people off from coming to see it. There's nothing wrong with it. I think it's a very good night out in the theatre. But I think, well, perhaps I've shot my bolt. But I think I probably could have written a proper musical. I'll never know now if I could have or not. Possibly people were dismissive of it because it was called Acorn Antiques. So anybody who didn't know what Acorn Antiques was, it must have looked like a very arrogant thing to call it that if you'd never heard of it. And it's just only an old television sketch after all.
What I have to say concerns everybody.
Acorn Antiques first saw the light of day as a short sketch in one of Victoria Wood's TV shows.
The fact is, Mrs. O, my life seems completely grey, bleak and pointless.
Well, yes, sometimes that's God's way of getting you to enjoy Gardener's World.
When I first did Acorn Antiques originally, which was 1984, when I did my first series for the BBC I've seen on TV, I wanted to have a running soap that went from episode to episode. And there were two things that inspired Acorn Antiques. One, for the look of it, one was Crossroads, which then was on 4 times a week. That was the first soap to be on every day. It was on from Monday to Thursday.
Make a list of everything.
Yes, and another rule is...
And I know they didn't allow them any editing time, so they weren't allowed to go back, and if they got themselves in a pickle, they had to get themselves out of it, which used to make it hilarious viewing as they valiantly tried to carry on. So that was one thing, and that was a really affectionate dig at Crossroads. And the other thing was Waggoner's Walk, which was this shocking thing on the radio, this terrible 15-minute serial where they all talked in cliches and exclamation marks. And so I took the style of Waggoner's Walk and I mixed it with the look of Crossroads, and then we added in some people like Mrs. Overall, played by an actress who couldn't remember her words, who was never ready to come on, who came on too early.
Stand by, Mrs. Overall. Steady on the doorway, 3.
I said for you, Lord Telford. I'm talking, Colin. For you, Lord Telford, it would be a pleasure and an honour.
She won't be long.
Where is she? Cue her!
She'll be there. Be calm. Be calm.
Come on!
I'm aware of that, Colin, after 30 years in the business.
Despite her misgivings, Victoria Wood has now adapted the West End version of the musical as a touring show.
I wanted to see whether it would stand up as a musical on its own account. It's like giving us a fresh start, really. You haven't got your big stars. We've just got a wonderful company, but they're not huge box office stars. And I'm directing it with Sammy, who was the assistant choreographer when it was first on in the West End.
I've been to the Botox booth. I'm worried Mr. Watkins will leave me now. I no longer have the bloom of youth.
All right, just stop. The thing is, you just look bonkers. That's the problem. You're looking more stressed than if you hadn't had any Botox. Just try doing nothing. Do nothing. See if you can get through that without keeping all very calm and beautiful. Think about Cher. She looks like that. I've written about 3 more numbers. We've got about 17 numbers in it now. I've written a new opening number, and I've written a duet for 2 gay men, because I've got 2 lovely actors with really, really high tenor voices, so I've got a tenor duet.
Why am I always buttoned up? Why can't I say that old cliche, I love you?
We've never been all lovey-dovey. We don't do cards, we don't do blues. It isn't love so much as jigsaws in the afternoons.
The original West End show was directed by Trevor Nunn.
Neil, you have to come in from the other side until after the moment of Celia's first line, okay?
That side.
If you're walking past the window during the Mrs. Overall line, we get total split focus.
You're not going to direct Trevor's version, is it? You're going
I am going to direct Trevor's version.
So you take what Trevor did, and you're going to...
because Trevor's very good at knowing where the chairs go and things like that, which I'm not very good at. So I'm going to copy all his staging, which he knows better. He says I can.
Says you can copy him?
Yeah.
So what will you be bringing to the table then? Just from the chairs.
Well, I'm just going to slightly rewrite it, which I'm doing at the moment.
He's bringing the paperwork. Oh, I think I can see him coming. And do something with your breasts. They're not quite level.
OK, just stop a second. I was going to change that last speech a little bit. So I've already phoned him and asked him to meet you here just about now. We only need 50,000. Cut. He's bringing the paperwork.
Wood felt the original show ran too long at 2.5 hours, so she's virtually removed the first part.
Because we're kicking off like halfway through, the number that we had open that section with, I didn't think was strong enough. It was fine where it came originally, but now I want to start with a real bang.
The idea of directing it, I mean, you've written it, written it, directed it, done the music and so on. It's getting very near sort of world control, isn't it? Really?
It isn't so much. I know it looks like control, but actually, it's just it's simplicity. It's simplicity. It's not having to filter your thoughts through somebody else's head, really. That's all it is.
You hear how Kim bites off her words in the next bit, spell it out, write it down. You have to chop it off, so it's really exaggerate the T's on cottage and British.
I couldn't have done a musical from scratch, and I couldn't have done a musical if Trevor had not helped me with Acorn Antiques in the first place and directed the first production. So I'm doing it very much at second remove.
You said you were a perfectionist full of self-doubt. Do you think that's been a help?
I think, really, it's never feeling that the thing you've done is quite good enough and that you could always do it a bit better, and that the only way I can ever think of to make anything better is to spend more time on it, really, and look at every angle and just see to every detail. It's not an arrogant thing. It's just sort of trying to make it as good as I can make it, really, and that's the only way. I don't rely on any sort of flash of genius to see me through any of these things that I do, and I think lots of people could do what I do if they spent that much time doing it.
You may like to know that Housewife 49 is now available to buy on DVD in all good retail stores. Now, next tonight, dissecting the issues behind the headlines, Alistair Stewart's here with the moral of the story.